Today's Karen Read trial, day 28. I'm going to give you my daily recap. Yesterday I took a day trip to Nantucket on day 28, so I watched in pieces. I just finished watching all of the testimony from yesterday. I'm going to film my recap now. I'm hoping I can get through it in one part, but there was a lot to cover. The day started off with the judges' rulings from the voir dire. That was earlier in the week. We had Wednesday off from court. So on Tuesday, the jury was not present, and we heard the expert testimonies from the defense's experts. Dr. Wolf and Dr. Rentschler are going to be able to testify in mostly a full capacity, and Dr. Marie Russell is going to be able to express her findings in somewhat of a limited capacity. We have Trooper Garino still on the stand, and he is the trooper that really handled all of the cell phone forensics and Cellebrite extractions from Karen Read's phone, Jen McCabe's phone, and John O'Keefe's phone. So we're continuing with his testimony. I'm not going to show you guys the text because they're not too critical, but we do see text messages from Laura Sullivan and Karen, and that was around the morning time of the 29th. She's letting Laura Sullivan, who is John O'Keefe's friend, John O'Keefe is the godparents to her kids, know that John passed away. In her text message, she says he died at 5 a.m. I don't think there's anything critical about that. If it was between 5 or 6 a.m., she was like in hysterics. So we hear that. And then we get into a lot of the voicemails from Karen Read calling John O'Keefe's phone. We heard the other day that there were 53 phone calls from Karen Read to John O'Keefe between 12:30 a.m. and 6 a.m. She left a series of voicemails for him. She is back home at his house at Meadows Ave. I'm guessing that she didn't know how John O'Keefe was going to get home. I'm not sure if she was going back to pick him up, but we know that she wasn't planning to stay at his house. So eventually she starts calling him, panicking around 12:30-ish. I think the first voicemail, was 12:37. He's not responding, so she's saying, John, I F-word hate you. Second one is at 12:42. It sounds like Karen is walking, and it sounds like she's in John O'Keefe's garage at this point. Third voicemail is at 12:59. I'm home with your kids. And she's really upset that he's not answering and not reporting back where he is, what he's doing. 1:18 a.m. Another voicemail, more screaming. She's calling him a loser. The rest is really hard to decipher. And then we hear voicemails at 5:23 a.m. So this is after she's woken up. She's woken up his niece Kaylee, and she doesn't know where he is. And the voicemail, she's saying, John, where are you? The eighth voicemail is at 6:08 a.m. And I think of all of the voicemails, this one is the most critical and the most interesting because you hear Jen McCabe on the phone in the background with 911 dispatch, and she sounds very calm. She says the guy is in the lawn. She doesn't refer to him as a Boston police officer, is unresponsive in the front lawn. She calls him the guy. And then you hear Karen Read in the background, extremely frantic. They're in Carrie Roberts' car. The phone is left in Carrie Roberts' car, so you hear the windshield wipers going the whole time too. There's also a report that she called her parents a couple times at 1 p.m. the next day. We get into a lot of the iPhone data from Apple Health. So if you're not aware, your phone actually acts as like a high technology pedometer, is what Trooper Garino is testifying to. And if you have an Apple Watch, you get more updated metrics like with your heart rate and that kind of thing. But if you just have your phone on your body, it can record steps or think that you are taking steps. So sometimes it's recording steps and you could just be moving the phone and manipulating the phone in a certain way and it could think it's a step. We learned that John O'Keefe and Karen Read used the Waze app to get to 34 Fairview. So they're lining up that testimony with the Apple Health data. And the big takeaway from all of this testimony, he is saying that John O'Keefe ascended or descended, we're not sure, 3 flights of stairs at a certain point that night between 12:22 and 12:24 a.m. And Trooper Garino's testimony is that he was driving on a hill in Canton coming to 34 Fairview. We get into the internal clocks of the iPhone. I had no idea, but certain apps in your phone use different clocks, so they could be using different times. This was a little bit confusing to explain, but it appeared to make sense that maybe the Waze app was lagged a little bit from the Apple Health data, and we get into it, but the defense wants to understand was he on the stairs? Could this be ruled out? And it really can't be ruled out. We also learned that Karen Read, in the car with John O'Keefe, her Apple Health data does not show her ascending or descending those stairs at that time frame. So to me, it would be more reasonable that he was inside a home or just somewhere walking and ascending the steps. So to bring it all together, we get the location data track John O'Keefe at 34 Fairview. We see that he arrives at about 12:24 a.m. Based on the Waze information. The cross-examination is done by David Yannetti, and he wants to discredit Trooper Guarino's experience during COVID. He took about 20 classes to get this expertise that he has, and I think it's fair and valid that he learned a lot of this during COVID. That doesn't bother me. It really, though, he's trying to discredit the fact that he should be an expert, and based on some of the other experts we've seen, he doesn't really sound so much like an expert. So yesterday I was watching the Emily D. Baker live stream because she helps give a little bit of extra insight, and I was on a time crunch, so she did a really good job with it yesterday. David Yannetti wants to know, when did you go through the Apple Health data? And it wasn't until April 2023. This is the Apple Health data for John O'Keefe. As we heard with Trooper Proctor's testimony, all of the evidence was trying to be pointed towards Karen Read, so there was no need for them to look at other things. They were just streamlining and looking at Karen Read specifically. So it kind of looks like they were very narrow-minded in their investigation, that they didn't pull this Apple Health info until over a year later in April 2023. Another huge takeaway from the day is that we learned that Karen Read's cell phone connects to John O'Keefe's Wi-Fi at his house at One Meadows Lane, automatically connects because she's been on his Wi-Fi before, at 12:36 a.m. So, in my opinion, the Commonwealth is claiming that John O'Keefe was killed around 12:45 a.m. If she wasn't there at 12:45, she was at John O'Keefe's house at 12:36. It's about a 6 to 7 minute drive back to the house. There's no way that she could have killed him if she wasn't there. We also know that Ryan Nagel, who is Julie Nagel's brother, arrived at 12:23 a.m. and they did see Karen Read's car with John O'Keefe when they arrived, because remember, the testimony was that they let her car go first to turn onto the road. So that was at 12:23. That evidence is corroborated that they were there at the same time. One last interesting thing from Trooper Guarino's testimony is Yannetti asks if from Karen's phone, did she delete any calls? And he's trying to establish that she's not guilty, so she wasn't deleting anything on her phone. We saw that there were deleted phone calls on Jen McCabe's phone. No, she had not deleted any calls. Yannetti asked if she deleted any of her Google searches, and this is where it gets a little sticky, and he says yes, because we know that the artifacts are on her phone, and this is what some of these Celebrate people were testifying to about the how long to die in the cold thing, is because of the artifacts still showing and the cookie still showing there. So he's saying yes, there is evidence that something could have potentially been deleted or history cleared on Karen Read's phone. We also learned that John O'Keefe's phone was found under his body, and it was at 17% charged, so the phone was still on when the police recovered it. In the redirect from Adam Lally, Trooper Guarino says that it's physically impossible to search two things at 2:27, and we know at 2:27 a.m. Jen McCabe was searching about the basketball team, something about It's Raining Men, so he does not think that it's possible that she searched the how long to die in the cold. He said, I was told when the defendant asked Jen McCabe to search it, and we believe that's when it was searched, and that was at 6:23 a.m. I'm going to have you guys go into part 2 because we get into the medical examiners.